All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Okay, guys. So we've gone. Oh, good to see you, Fran. We've gone through the settings, and I know that was a lot. I've had to go through every single one of them and play with them, but I think that if you've kind of followed my suggestions on what you turn on and you turn off, then you shouldn't have any security problems. Okay. So now let's just go through some pointers on best practices for protecting the mediation. All right. So just some pointers. And you just may, and I can type a little bit of this, but you may want to write this down as well. So one moment. I'm looking at another computer, I'm sorry. Okay. If you don't want to be Zoom bombed by someone who accidentally gets your meeting ID and password, you want to make sure that you lock the mediation. If you go to participants as a host, you'll be able to see the option for lock meeting. If you lock the meeting, that means nobody else can join, even if they have the credentials that you provided them. Okay. So in a mediation, this might be good once you have all the parties show up and the lawyers show up and you know, okay, these are the only people who are necessary for this meeting. You can go ahead and lock the meeting, and then that's it. You can breathe easy and know that you won't get any more surprises. No one's gonna be walking in. Okay. So lock the meeting once everyone has joined, and that's going to be under manage participants. Next, we've already selected, okay, so when you're doing a setting, obviously never allow for participants to be able to join before the host. The host always needs to join first, okay? And one thing I'll do when I finish is go back to scheduling a meeting so we can schedule a meeting, but show you what I'm going to turn on and off. Most of them should all be selected for me because I've already gone to my master settings list. However, depending on the specific meeting I'm going to have, I may need to tweak a few things. But enable people host, never. You don't want people to be able to show up before you. You want them to be going to your waiting room. And they can only do that if you have launched the meeting first. Make sure you always include a password. So here's my tip for password creation. People may get confused by thinking that the password is the meeting ID, the two different things. You do know that the meeting ID will always be 9 digits, right? So my suggestion is to make the password a word so people can't confuse them, okay? So if you're making the password a word, you may make it something like Zoom123, okay? Because that has a word and numbers. And I say Zoom123 because then my next meeting might be Zoom456. The reason for that is so that you can kind of have a system created in your head about how your passwords are going to be created. So they're always going to be unique passwords, but you don't have to be thinking each time, okay, what was that? Was that Tiger? Was that password 1? Was that password Zoom2? You have a system so that when you're creating your password, especially if you're having an assistant schedule mediations for you, you can kind of have your head around a system of password creation that will always exist to make it really easy whenever you're creating the password. So I just recommend having a word, maybe a word with numbers, but at least a word for the password and the numbers that Zoom will give you for the user ID. I mean, for the Zoom meeting ID. Okay, what happens if you are hacked? If you're hacked, well, I mean, just kill the meeting. In the meeting, for everybody and do it again. Give people a new password so they can rejoin. Or forget Zoom and just do the backup feature by going to using your freeconferencecall.com or some other tool that you might have already set up. Okay. I was gonna say if somebody truly hacks you, I think you have bigger problems, because what I'm noticing, the complaints that people are making against Zoom, or I've been hacked, are not true hacking. Uh, when I think of hacking, I think of people, who hide and use technology to break in to a mediation. But usually what's been happening is not that. It's where the hosts are forgetting to turn on some really simple settings to help protect the meeting. If you just admit all, or if you don't put a password in, then you cannot be surprised if some nefarious actors are showing up in the meeting to do bad acts. Okay, I've been seeing this in the news lately, but I'm just warning people: you need to close the door, lock the room. Okay, literally, so that you're not having problems when you are having your meeting. Okay, this Zoom bombing thing can be a thing of the past if people simply use a little bit of common sense and turn on the settings that Zoom built to protect. The other day, Zoom did announce on Twitter that they're putting some things by default. For example, the waiting room now is by default. Before, you had to manually turn that on. It was not by default. Now, Zoom is making that by default so that you have to turn it off if you don't want it, because Zoom knows that's one of the best ways to protect a meeting. So, waiting room is now turned on by default. And I believe another thing that they just turned on by default is generating an automatic uh, meeting ID instead of suggesting you use your PMI. Okay, let's talk about the PMI for a second. Your personal meeting ID. It's a 9-digit. It's like your phone number. Zoom gives it to you. Please protect it. Don't use that for your mediations. Make sure that you always have Zoom generate a unique user, a unique meeting ID for that meeting. Once the meeting is over and it's ended, it will never be used again. Okay? You get a new combination. Zoom can do billions of these permutations, right? To generate these new numbers. So don't worry, your number is unique for your meeting right now, but don't use your personal meeting ID to host a mediation. That's going to give you problems because the people who know it will remember it, and they may be able to hack you later. Okay? So this is, if that ever happens, by the way, you may want to turn on the setting for require a password when you are using your PMI to host a personal meeting, because you don't want people who might know your personal meeting ID to be able to come in. So for example, if I'm talking to Natalia and we're having an office meeting, I'm going to always use my PMI, okay, my personal meeting ID, because I know her and I don't need a password with her. However, if I'm going to meet strangers online or meet people I've never met, I'm always going to have Zoom create an automatic, um, generate an automatic meeting ID code just for that meeting. Same, it's gonna be 9 digits. Okay. Next, we talked about the password, but also you need to put on a PIN number for the phone. Okay, so if people are going to be appearing by telephone, that they be required to type in the code that they get. I would say generally, if you are going to have a very large meeting, you may want to have a co-host just to be your secret police, someone who can help you just focus on the presentation. Because the last thing you need, guys, when you're doing a webinar or these kind of meetings, is to be thinking about security as well. You want to be focused on your meeting or your presentation, not worried about what's going to happen. This is another reason you may want to have a co-host, so that that person can be responsible for safeguarding the meeting while you focus on other things. okay, let's talk about for mediation. Let's say you're doing a caucus room. You know, you have to turn on. You're gonna see this in action when we do the um, scheduling. But if you put people in caucus rooms, you don't want them to be able to leave the caucus room to come back to the main session. You have to tweak that setting under the scheduling settings when you're setting up a mediation, because you don't want someone to be able to just walk out of their caucus room until you approve it. Okay. Again, I wish that Zoom will allow this to be party by party. For example, I want the lawyers to be able to leave the caucus room and come into the main session, but I don't want the parties to be able to do that. But right now is either all or nothing. You can either allow everyone to be able to leave the caucus room to come back to the main session, or you can have no one be able to do it until you close the caucus rooms, all of them at the same time. Okay. So I'm a little torn on this one. I would like for people to be able to have the ability to move themselves back into the main session, but I don't know if that would not be abused. Okay, I don't know if there was a reason for me to put people in the caucus rooms in the first place. Maybe it was for harassment purposes or for safety reasons. I don't necessarily want for people to be able to leave and then see each other. So that's one reason I just turn it off until I'm ready to end the um, the rooms. But it's up to you. You have to play with it both ways to find out what's best. And I definitely want to hear from Danielle Camo about her experiences on this. And I'll get to questions and experiences in a minute, okay, guys? And other best practices.
You want to hear from me on people leaving the breakout rooms?
For people being able to leave their breakout rooms after you've created them and you've assigned them into their rooms, what best practice would you recommend for that?
So it hasn't really come up for me in terms of people wanting or actually leaving on their own. I've had instances where I wanted to meet with the clients and I just moved them out, although I believe I have left the option on that they could leave the breakout room at the time, simply because I didn't know that I had the option to turn that off.
Got it.
But since I've never really thought about it and fiddled with it, I just don't have people wanting to leave. So hasn't been a problem.
I understand. Yeah. And I think my only reason for thinking it could be a problem is if people abuse it, especially in maybe like a family violence situation, in the um, physical world, when you have your mediation and the parties are in two different rooms, you normally don't have the parties leaving their room and going to the hallway to talk. The mediator maintains control. And so that's the only concern I have. And I definitely want to get Dr. Manuso's opinion about this as well. I can unmute. Okay, there you go.
I can unmute from the top too, and that's better because as I've moved the cursor, I went to speak a minute ago, and it froze your picture.
Got it.
And it froze your voice. So I'm the less that movement I think of the cursor, the better. Just as an FYI. I get nervous when I hear you saying that just the lawyers can move out of the side room,
Mm-hmm.
the caucus room.
Mm-hmm.
I think there needs to be an opportunity for people to tell us that they need to come out, or a set period of time that they can expect to be in, and then be checked on in increments or something. Mm-hmm. But the parties should always stay with their attorneys. It's kind of odd.
Oh, otherwise. The scenario I had painted was imagining a party with lawyer in one room, party with lawyer in one room,
right?
And having the lawyers only, while leaving their own parties in their room, being able to step out. Right. And now you can do that by moving them to the lawyer's room.
Into their own lawyer room too.
Yeah. But that means you have to move them. That doesn't give the lawyers the opportunity to leave. And
Well,
so,
that's good. That's all right.
yeah,
I don't see that as an issue. I think that I think that that can work just fine. That would happen in a regular mediation anyway. Uh, that they'll tell you that they want to meet together, and
mhm,
you just coordinate it for them.
okay,
So I don't see.
S-
I think what you're doing is terrific because you can mirror very much what you do in a real
exactly,
space, and
exactly.
that's how you're showing this, and I think that's great.
Uh, Fran, you wrote, sometimes I need to keep the lawyers apart because they start fighting. I think the mediators should control taking the lawyers into separate breakout rooms. Got it. Yeah. So Danielle hasn't had any problems with it so far with regards to people just leaving the room voluntarily, but it's up to you to turn that ability on or off. Okay. By default, I have mine off. People can't leave unless I move them together into other places.
And
But
you know what, Mac, this is Danielle, and I'll just add to that. Even though I've done quite a few of these now, I'm still doing them a lot of times when it's people's first times participating as well, or maybe
yes,
second or third.
yes,
And they don't even know the technology that's sitting in front of them. And they're just happy that we help them get to the screen in the room. So I don't even think they're fiddling around and saying, well, if I leave this meeting, they don't even know what that means. Does it leave the entire meeting? Does it just leave the breakout room? So I
hmm,
would be really surprised to see people just kind of experimenting on their own. And so I think that's another reason why once I've kind of figured it out, it's not so much of a priority because people are not sitting there trying to figure out how I can get out of this meeting. So that's just kind of a reality perspective there.
got it. No, thank you. And this is why we need to hear from the people who are doing this a whole lot. I just haven't ran into the situation where it ever comes up, but I just think that if it should, I'm just gonna have mine turned off. Okay, so and then let me see if there's anything else before I do scheduling. Which will take only a couple minutes. Um, okay. Well, obviously, we spoke about you know the mediator having the right to, we didn't speak about it today. Another meeting we spoke about the mediator having the right to have the parties turn their camera around so you can see their space. I can imagine some people objecting to that because they're going to say things like, well, my room's not clean, but that should help with security as well, for privacy and confidentiality, to make sure that people don't have lurkers sitting in the corner or kids listening in to adult conversation. If you put that into your agreement to mediate, okay, under your ground rules, under your policies, then that may make people think twice. That even if you're not going to make them do it, they will be careful not to um, try. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to have someone running really fast out of a room in order not to get caught. That'd be kind of funny, actually. Okay. Um, I think I think that's it in terms of tips. The basic things I've given you today should help protect the meeting. Okay. Oh, let's say this. So I'm soon to do a mediation, and one of the parties informed me they don't want to um, see the other party at all. Otherwise, they're going to leave. So this is going to be one of those mediations that will probably start off at as a pure caucus style mediation. It's pretty cantankerous. And Zoom does allow you to admit one party into the caucus room first before the other parties have even showed up to the meeting. Once they show up, of course, and you had already opened the caucus room, then the individual who is secret and private, they are in one of the rooms. But the new participants who have just joined you are going to be under unassigned. That's what Zoom is going to call them. And you can move them into rooms just fine. So I know that situation is going to be kind of rare, but if you have a situation where that's to happen, then you are able to place a party into a caucus room before ever having everyone join into a main session. Okay. I've had a mediation in real life where a judge ordered the party. It was a family violence case. Well, there was allegations of family violence, and the judge ordered us to see a particular mediator out in Fort Bend County who had not just 2 rooms, but literally 2 buildings, okay, side by side. And one party went through one door, and the other parties had to go through another door. And then there's a alleyway where the mediator would go back and forth. That one was a little strange, but we settled the case and it worked out. And the parties never saw each other. So in the rare instance where that may need to happen, just know you can do the same thing by replicating real life. Because I don't know what that judge would do in the situation with Zoom, especially if the judge doesn't know about the technology. But the technology is there, it does allow for that, okay? Just in case there's another security issue. Okay, I'm going to schedule a mediation, a fake mediation real quick, and you can just see real quick some of the settings that I have on for when it comes to security. All right, and this will be the last part, and then we will wrap up with questions and concerns and comments. Share screen, here we go. So, oh, by the way, guys, I do have my mediation confirmation letter that goes out, that we send to participants. I created a version to share with people who may need it, because one thing I do is go in detail with some real quick prompts of how they are to start. Obviously, we're using instantmediations.com, and so it tells them exactly the step-by-steps of what they need to do. Okay, make sure they have it downloaded, visit the website, click start, type in their ID, type in their password, or they may just visit the link. And that will take them into the meeting. This is not my agreement to mediate with my policies and ground rules. This is just my confirmation letter that I usually need to get out real quick to the parties to at least confirm. And it tells them how to pay before the mediation, and it tells them the price and how long it's going to be. So anyone who needs that, I did create the version for them to be able to just change whatever they want to change. And again, this is really with instantmediations.com in mind, but it can be, of course, adapted and customized for use with anybody else. And I even include a link to the YouTube channel where people can go and get some more tips on best practices on how to participate in the mediation. I think the more you show people, especially by video, with short little clips, it will help them feel more comfortable with the process, okay? So that will be available to anyone who wants it. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and schedule a meeting. So I'm going to go to schedule a meeting, and let me call it my typical John Doe and Jane Doe mediation. I always put both parties' names because I don't want it to seem impartial. And I will select a date. Let's say I'll be doing this tomorrow at 1 p.m. Let me put my typical duration. My time zone's already set. I'm not going to select registration. Why? This requires that they register with an email that you use to schedule the meeting, okay? Because it's going to have them sign into Zoom with their email. This to me will complicate things by creating an extra step that is not necessary. I prefer instead to just require a meeting. I will select the word. So here I'll put Zoom 789 as a meeting password. And of course, I'll always have generate automatically. Okay. And for video, I want both parties on. And for audio, I want both abilities on. And enable waiting room always for security. Do not enable join before host for security. And I will, of course, do my breakout rooms, and I can create my breakout rooms for a petitioner, respondent, and lawyer. And I don't need to create only authenticated users can join because I will require the password. And I shouldn't have any problems. Now I'll click save so that it can give me my unique Zoom meeting ID. And that is it. Okay, so I've stopped sharing and let me open it up. You guys can unmute yourselves and we can just have a discussion on any other best practices. Let me unmute everybody. Any best practices, any other tips, any other suggestions on how to maintain security, privacy, confidentiality? Go ahead.
Matt, can I just mention that there's an opportunity to build the invitation where you stop short of that, where you can click so that you get that information and you send it out to the participants.
Correct.
Just in case somebody didn't realize it. But I also had a problem. I did one the other day where it said add your participants. So when I added their email addresses, they never got the email and we couldn't do it. So then I had to quickly go back, reschedule, and just send them the link. So I don't know if anybody else has had a problem with that. But when I tried to contact Zoom in the middle of all my stuff, I was queued 276 before they could get to my question. And I'm paying for it. So I was really not happy. But I just rescheduled it and then sent out just the link with that invitation and didn't try to add their email addresses. But I don't know, has anybody else had an issue like that? It was a bad lesson at the wrong time.
No, Dr. Ministro, just to clarify, when you had put this email, was that at the stage of the breakout rooms?
No.
Okay.
This was when I was inviting them to come for their session with me. It was a family. It was a family. So I had all their email addresses. So I was adding their, it said add participants.
Got it.
So I wanted to make sure they each got their invitation to come. And as it turned out, they didn't get the invitation. One did, or something out of the 4 people. It was that was odd.
Yep.
And then the rest of them, I couldn't even bring them in later where you say invite people. It wouldn't pull up their invitations. So then I just stopped, rescheduled, reinstituted, but built that little invitation where you just stopped. You did all your programming, but then to have that invitation
absolutely
materialize.
Yeah, when you saw that confirmation page, right? That I was just given, I had the option to copy the details of the meeting. So what I normally do is I'll open up my own email because people are used to that. I don't want there to be anything that's going to cause confusion. I'll open my own email, just copy it, paste it, and I can send it off. However, I'll do one even better. In my confirmation letter that I'll share with you guys, it has the details exactly as they need it. And it's in red, so they can't make a mistake. And I say, here's all you need: the 9 digits and the password. and they'll be able to then use it. Now, that's assuming the person is on instantmediation.com, which is all I'm going to be using. But I also say in the very bottom, alternately, you can just click on the link. The link already has the 9 digits in it. If you click the link, all it's going to make you do is put the password.
Should
Okay.
do it.
Yes. And so the link is really the most important thing because the link has the 9 digits in it already. And so the link will then take them to the password prompt for them to enter the waiting room. So use your regular email whenever possible so people can know who it's coming from. Please, go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
One of the other issues that I had encountered after people came in, sometimes from that invitation, I now clean it up also, and then I highlight the parts. I'll make it like 16 point in bold.
Got it.
I had a complication with you last time that I got flustered as I went in and didn't think to see the second part of it.
Yeah.
So just to take more information off, because it doesn't always process neat. It kind of gets jumbled up. So
Yes.
I separate it with lines and then bold, make it larger, the parts that I really want them to see. So I think that's worth people being mindful of.
No, absolutely. And this is why I have this paragraph so that it's extremely simple. Because if people are going to get lost, it's going to be right here. Okay. So it's just literally 5 simple steps in the last, and we put things in red so that they can know exactly what to look for. This is why I even put the button in this color so I can trigger them to remember what it looks like so they can't make a mistake. And
well, I make it more simple. I have ID, name, password, boom. So I don't have any copy with it. It just stands out in the middle by itself, and get all the numbers. If it's not relevant, they're not international, they're not New York or San Jose, as they're, try to make the difference. So I'll clean it for just the time zones I need. And that's true. I think a little bit more successful. Yeah, just isn't it?
Yes, Dr. Maniso keeps going in and out a little bit, but I heard you. Okay, anybody else? Please, the floor is open, guys, for ideas, best practices, tips, especially when it comes to security, privacy, confidentiality, and settings.
Settings, me from my part. I am scheduling in another time zone, and I am scheduling, of course, in another language. And Zoom is not available in my language. So please know that is very limited language versions of Zoom. So when scheduling, just make sure that people whom you are writing to really at least possess basic English, which in here happen to be here in Poland quite a bit of an issue. However, it does require some more, there is a possibility to customize it more to your options. And 2 things that I really want to point out. The first is that when you schedule and want the participants to be able to participate both via telephone and computer audio, which is an option under the scheduling a meeting, you can also choose a particular country where people can dial in directly. So the default Zoom gives only those United States options. But currently, under my settings, I have dial from Poland, and what I am sending my clients, they just don't get all these fantastic American telephone numbers. They're just given 2 free Polish phones. So if anything happens, they can dial in from there. So when you're having an international mediation or someone joins in from abroad, just make sure that they also have the possibility to use a free phone from the location where they are. Which is perfectly possible under the invitation, and it will happen automatically. Of course, the invitation that Zoom normally sends gives you this option because it says, oh, you can check this link and check for a free phone in your time zone or in your location. However, people in mediation are already stressed, and if something gets wrong and they are to dial in again, they need to have a certain tool that they can really rely on. So I am putting that already in the email. The second tool I wanted to tell you about is that, and also Dr. Manuso already mentioned it a little, even though this entire invitation goes out in English, and Spanish is available for Zoom, and German is available for Zoom, Russian, Portuguese, but Polish not, I tend to, and it is possible, have my own paragraph, which I type in Polish, and it's already a part of the invitation. So any exotic languages like Polish can be just mentioned already in the invitation, giving people some sort of a flavor that there is really someone welcoming them in their own language. So even those customized Zoom invitations can be done to look more friendly, more adjusted to the purposes of mediation, not only for the purposes of Zoom meetings as it was designed.
Thank you. Yeah, I saw that language choice you're talking about, and it's really, really a great feature, because I was wondering, how can people from Mexico, for example, doing a Spanish mediation, call in from an American number or dial into an American number? And so you need to be able to let them call from their own countries. You need to be able to let them call to a number that's in their own country. Otherwise, you may be making them incur long distance charges as well. Okay. More.
But Natalie, you said you have that in Poland, right? There's not a phone number for Poland?
No, there is. There is. There's like
oh,
three.
I'm sorry.
There is.
But
it's just
your
you
idea
need to make it
customizing
manually. So it's not a default.
So customizing it, though, in the
Yes.
language, I think is a nice, very nice choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Danielle, wanted to hear a couple more of your experiences the last couple of weeks, because I know you've been doing these back to back to back.
Well, they've gone really well. That's all I can say. It's again, most of the hiccups or challenges is just initializing and getting people on and up. I haven't had any issues with, getting people into the breakout sessions. I use my assistant. I don't know who was here when we started these conversations, but I use my assistant quite heavily to assist in the onboarding, if you will. And she calls everybody 20 to 15 minutes before the mediation. She just starts going down the list and making sure that people, know how to get in. And she will sign in basically she signs in as me. So, but we can both be signed in as me, which is weird, but we can. And but she's kind of incognito, no video or no audio. And she's on the phone with people and, yep, I see you. Okay, you're in the waiting room right now. She'll let you in. As soon as I let somebody in the waiting room, I put them in their breakout room. And because I like to start my mediation separate, then bring people together for the joint caucus, and then separate them again. And so the initializing in the caucus rooms are really just for me to be able to walk in and say, hey, okay, everybody's here, it's good. Any oddities, any quirks? Do we need a session jointly? Do we not? It's just as if you were walking into somebody's room and saying, hey, before we start the mediation, it's just my own pre-mediation ritual that I do, but I do it with the virtual rooms. So my success is 100% tied to the assistance of my assistant. And I think we've worked something out that is pretty seamless for us. The only time I've had a real issue is Zoom it just se fue. I'm like, everything froze and it stopped. And I think it needed to be updated, but it never prompted me for that until after I worked my way through it. But fortunately, it was all people I knew. So one of the things I've done, folks, is, because really I've done like 14 of these last week and probably 10 the week before, and 1, 2, 3 already this week. So one thing that really helps is I have my assistant get she just gets a list of everybody who's attending. They're not necessarily the clients, because I'll let the lawyers be able to reach out to their clients, but corporate reps, lawyers, I get a contact telephone number and an email address. And if something goes wrong in the middle of Zoom, I can pick up my phone. So I have had, my phone has been a trusty sidekick, so that if, you know, the audio goes out or something, I can still pick up the phone and reach the people. You've got to have a way you can reach them, because inevitably your Wi-Fi is going to go out, or it's going to be slow, or something's going to happen with Zoom, or something's going to happen on their end, and you can't burn 45 minutes in the middle of a mediation trying to figure out the technology. So if it doesn't, if your issue doesn't happen in the very beginning, and you've established rapport and you've established everything, and something goes wrong in the middle of it, it's not that big of a deal if all of a sudden we lose Mac, but I can get him on the phone. We can keep the momentum going. So it's all about having a plan B, so that you don't have to panic when something goes wrong. And because you're the one who's in control, everybody's looking to you. You're the one who's put this together, so they think you're the expert, whether you are or not. And so I've had very few glitches, but when I've had them, it has been very helpful to have the list of easy direct contact by telephone right there with me. And everybody has been super patient, because this is new for everyone. Nobody wants this to be, you know, the norm per se going forward. And so we're all really kind of just willing to be patient, but planning and making sure that the people who you expect to join are able to do so with a friendly assistant hand, to me has been proved invaluable.
Thank you. That was really helpful, actually, and I like that idea of having your cheat sheet of phone numbers right next to you to be able to call right in.
Yeah, I will tell you, I've used that on multiple occasions, and it really does help to be able to know exactly how to get a hold of somebody if something goes wrong.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great.
Otherwise, I got to tell you, it's not preferred to face, but it is working very well, and we're getting cases settled, and people seem happy under the circumstances, and so I'm just really glad that that we're making these efforts to be better users of it and better stewards of it, and that we can keep the process of litigation and going forward and giving people an opportunity to have their cases heard when,
let me ask you, the start button, you know, this thing that I said, I told Natalia once, we got to patent it. I'm just kidding.
But the what button?
The start mediation.
Start mediation.
The start mediation
it is
button
everywhere on the website.
Yeah, we put that button everywhere on the website. Do you people use it to start the mediation?
So I use it when I'm beginning my day, just to make sure that my video is working, my audio is working, I know what I look like. But then I just go into my meetings and.
Yeah, how do your clients, how do your mediation parties start? Like, how do they get into the meeting? They have your assistant connects them, but where do they go initially?
I have no idea, Mac.
Oh, okay.
I have zero idea. I know that she generates the you know, she schedules the meeting, then she copies the invite, she sends it out of our external Gmail, and so they just get the link, and then she, you know, calls them and walks them through it.
Great, cool. Yeah. We got a good legal assistant. That's awesome.
I pay her very well.
That I am also using my assistant to do that for me. And the one who holds the phone during this entire meeting or mediation is my assistant. So if something goes wrong, it is her who calls everybody and checks if everything is all right. So I don't have to stop. So there is always someone handy who really takes on whenever any technical issue arises.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. All right, guys. Anything else?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. And I'll email anyone. I'll put the template on the community so anybody can download it. But yes, Dr. Ministro, I'll email it to you in a few minutes. And I think that's it for now until the next training.